nuns taught us there are two ways through life. The way of nature and the way of grace. You have to choose which one you'll follow.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Let's Take 5, the podcast where we take a cinema legend, take 5 of their films to highlight their excellence and range. My name is Austin Luger.
My name's Eric Martindale.
And today is the start of a new 5. This is Terence Malick. We're going to be covering the following films, starting with today's Badlands. After this, we're covering Days of Heaven, The Thin Red Line, The New World, and The Tree of Life. But first, Badlands. Badlands is the very curious 1973 film that was his film debut, starring a very young Martin Sheen and a very young Sissy Spacek. It is based very loosely off a series of real murders. It is about a young girl who kind of falls in love and lust with this young guy in South Dakota, looks like James Dean. He kills her dad after the dad's pretty awful to her, and they go on the run. And that sounds like it's a tense thriller, but it's not. In fact, it is much like the Malick films we're going to be covering coming up, this rather serene, sometimes even weirdly peaceful exploration of America being caught up by some horrible violence.
Yeah, I mean, if he's not a murderer, then the film is, well, obviously it's a very different film, but it doesn't feel that different.
Right.
Like, honestly, like him killing people is not that big of a deal. It almost happens. It happens rather naturally in the film, in a way that kind of, I think it's kind of bizarre because it doesn't really change things all that much. Like the murders kind of just happen, and then that does move us to point A. I mean, the big murders of the dad, and that gets them, and then the runaways at that point. But then when the murders happen, the body count racks up. It never really changes what the movie is really about.
It's surprising in a way.
Yeah.
And I mean, the movie, it reflects the point of view of Sissy Spacek. She narrates the film.
And one of the best child performances like ever.
Right. She's incredible.
She's amazing.
Yeah. And this is before Carrie.
Yeah.
Just incredible in this.
Her narration is amazing. It's great. I mean, the dialogue's great too, but boy, is she good.
Well, and I don't know if this is the case back in the 70s, but Malick is kind of famous for rewriting the voiceover like crazy, oftentimes writing it after he finished filming. He will tend to film a ton, then edit it, and then write some voiceover and bring the actors back into it. And there's something just very kind of special about the way he kind of films these two characters, because it's one of these stories of youth, but it's really not criticizing the youth. It's really sometimes even being jealous of their perspective, of like just witnessing the world through their eyes. And I never really found, I mean, obviously the film takes the violence as a negative thing. It is not a promotion of violence, but it is something very it's interesting. It's a compassionate film towards at least one definite like bad person.
Right, but it kind of, in a weird way, I think what it does very brilliantly is he never murders anyone for no reason.
Well, there are times when he doesn't need to murder them.
He doesn't. Well, no, that's different. Him not needing to murder them and not murdering them for a reason.
Okay.
So, like, when he kills the dad, it's so he won't call the cops.
Yes.
If the dad never walked in and saw him help, if the dad let him date.
Well, that was him also at his angriest, though.
Yeah.
I mean, not only is it stopping them from dating, but the dad killed her dog.
Right. The dad killed her dog. Right. Forgotten about that. So he kills him for that reason. Then the next person person he shoots are the cops that are trying to kill him.
Yes.
So they're shooting at him, so he shoots back and he kills them. Now and then
wait, are they the ones who come into their like tree fort?
Their tree fort.
Yeah.
And then the next instance is he shoots a guy that's his friend because he thought he was running away from him. And then the voiceover very brilliantly tells us that he felt horribly about that because that was someone he didn't need to kill. Then the next two people he kills would have been witnesses to that. So again, it kind of does I think that's really neat. He never just like walks in somewhere, kills somebody, takes their shit, and leaves. Like that's not how he's really operating in the film.
Well, it's
like he has kind of a code.
Well, he has a code that
because he's such a nice guy.
Yeah, I know.
That's so weird.
But it's a code that is so brilliantly ill-defined because it is a code of contradictions.
Right.
There's a reason the film kind of keeps bringing up the fact that he looks like James Dean. It's because, I mean, he represents this, rise of the teenager anti-authority element. Mm-hmm. Like, he's a loser. He's a loser who just cannot seem to function with being told what to do. Mm-hmm. Much like that's what like the imagery of James Dean with Rebel Without a Cause is. Mm-hmm. And he's just frustrated, and like the only way that he can have the order he wants is to essentially be isolated. Mm-hmm. Isolated with her, another kind of element of contradiction. But she's
also a kid.
Who's doing whatever he says.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's 10 years old. I think he's 25. She's 15. It does say
around there.
It does say something. So, like when I say he's a nice guy, I mean just that. I'm not saying he's a good person.
No,
like
he murders people
because. Well, yeah. I mean, and but also like that contradiction is. If that contradiction wasn't there with his nice guyness and how he sort of plays along and how he's kind of a sociopath, I don't know what the pulse of the movie is, because that's kind of what, from scene to scene, other than the brilliant acting by Sissy Spacek and the gorgeous set pieces, the little gorgeous sets and setting that you have, because it's like running away together. Like, it does capture a romantic feel. I mean, there's this macabre sense of dread in it because we know they murdered somebody, but as these two young people are traveling the desert late at night and dancing in front of the car and, making out in their tree fort and stuff like that, there is an odd sense of romance to it, except for it's on the backs of these murders. So you have this sort of duality going on. The murders and this weird personality that's forming out of Charlie Sheen's or Martin Sheen's character is kind of the beat of the drum that keeps things going, because you're waiting to see it all fall apart, right?
And the film,
because if they just ran away, it wouldn't be as interesting,
right? And the film is such a very strange, like, kind of peaceful element to it. It's not like it's the Dunkirk score where you kind of always hear a ticking clock.
No,
it
lulls you into a sense of comfort, even
much like how she is. She's never really in danger from him per se.
No, he would never kill her.
Right. The danger is being around him.
He might get her killed, but he would never kill her.
And she reckoned, I mean, she's not like a dumb person. I mean, it's just it's youth. And there is this kind of sweetness. I mean, there is a strong attraction she has to him. That's what's kind of driving some of this going on.
She says he was the best looking because he looks like James Dean.
Yeah.
And by the way, Martin Sheen was great looking in this film. Yeah. I never thought Martin Sheen was like a great looking guy, and I saw Badlands. I was like, dude, Martin Sheen in his younger day, he was a looker. Yeah, totally.
And I just love...
Also great performance by him, too.
So good.
Yeah.
Like, it's just someone who's just very uncomfortable. I think partly because, like, either... The only way he knows how to stand up for himself is through violence. Like, he has a job, he's not very good at it, so he quits. Like he just can't do...
In the middle of the shift. Yeah. But it is really super polite about it.
Yeah. He's a nice guy like that. I mean, even one of my favorite images of the movie, he's trying to fish. He's not good at fishing, so he starts shooting the water. He just keeps shooting the fish. Yeah. And it's not like he's a brilliant, like, revolutionary guy where he has a better sense of structure than the world.
No, that would be like Cool and Luke.
No, yeah, and he's not as smart or as strong of a code as Cool and Luke. I love in one of her voiceovers, they're describing this. It's not like elaborate tree fort. It's like almost like Moonrise Kingdom. Like, this is our home in the trees kind of thing.
That's what I'm saying. There's a weird romance that actually kind of works.
Oh, sure.
It's goofy because once the father is killed, then the movie actually kind of convinces you, and keep in mind, Martin Sheen's the one that killed the father, that these two people do need each other.
Well, because now they're creating their own world.
Yeah.
And the only way they really are any good is when they can be completely with them, with nature. Mm-hmm. But, like... They're still a bit dumb. The film doesn't like it. I just love the voiceover where she says, when we're at a treehouse, well, the first thing we did every morning was decide the new password.
Yeah.
That is such a great Cause like now, like you, like cause people who never had their own homes before, they always like live with like someone else kind of thing. This is them establishing their own rules, even though that doesn't work. That said, when someone's coming, they both knew the code right away. So,
well, and also they had an incredible readiness because the place was built like a fortress.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the Tower of London, man. They have like trapdoors and all this other crazy stuff, and snares and everything else.
And so they go from this kind of delightful, convoluted play place of sorts, and then the more they kind of keep traveling towards Montana, the more you just kind of admire just the natural beauty, which is going to be very reminiscent for all of Malick's films, but like the actual like Badlands. Like this is they feel the most at peace when you just can't see like anything for miles. And
much like that, I think that I've used this phrase a lot. The sort of moronic beauty of youth really works here in this film for a couple of different reasons. Not just with the Sissy Spacek character, which most of her energy is focused on him until it isn't anymore. The Martin Sheen character, he knows he's going to die at the end of this. There's no like illusions being made. Like we're doing things to not get caught, but eventually I will get caught.
Yeah.
And I don't care. I'm going to die young. I'm like accepting that. That only really works if the characters are really young, I think.
Yes.
And it's great. I mean, it's
because
great.
he has no responsibility except for her.
Yeah. And his charisma makes up for his stupidity and his ruthlessness. So it's kind of it's interesting because the way it sort of develops, and it's so unnaturally natural.
Of course,
I don't know how to describe it. It removes the big obstacle that stops people from running away, which is the parent. The parent's killed. Now all bets are off.
Right.
And this really isn't a Bonnie and Clyde situation. She's really just wrapped up in the chaos. She never really does anything too terrible.
No, she just loves him, and she loves. After being such a very kind of cold relationship in her own house. Her mother died, and then her father dies in this film. This feels like she's not seen as a kid; she's seen as an equal, even though he still has the leadership qualities of the relationship. And in fact, when it starts to go sour for them is when like she's being more realistic about what they can accomplish, and she's like, "I think you have to get a job."
Yeah,
and like this is like something he had like not thought about for a long time. He's like, I like coal. I like coal. I can like work at a coal thing.
Well, he was living that fantasy, and he was content to live that way forever because as long as she was willing to indulge it. Because in his world with her, he's the great provider and the great superhero, and once that illusion is snapped, it's over.
Right, because he can't actually like.
He wants to do this with her. He's not going to do it on his own.
Like he can't like naturally get the things. Like he can't get a job. He can't keep a job. He has to rob a guy's truck for gas.
And when we go back up to the mountains, I'm going to catch you a big trout. Well, we know he can't fish.
No, he can't fish. And again, he also has that very kind of great politeness to him. Like, well, sir, I'm sorry about that, but you have the gas, and I don't have any gas, so I'm going to take your gas.
Take your gas. So stand over there.
Yeah.
So that's all really neat. One thing that I really like, kind of accenting that youth and how I love how the romance is sort of played between the two, right? Because it's played very. Sissy Spacek is very monotone throughout the film anyway, and he's bringing a lot of the charisma, and she's more the follower, and it works really nicely. And it's best on display about 20 minutes into the film when they have sex for the first time, which isn't on screen, but it just happens. This is so like a young thing to say it's great. It's creepy because he's 25 and she's 15, but you kind of lose that in this. You kind of lose sight of that. He walks away from her, and she goes, "So that's it?" And he goes, "Yeah, I guess." And she's like, well, I don't see what all the fuss is about. And he goes, "Yeah." It's like it's not even like it's not taking into consideration anything other than just the reality of what the situation was. There's no like social whatever to that. It's just like, oh yeah, that wasn't a big deal.
It's so great when you
It's hilarious.
Because it's also her wanting more, right?
Yeah. It's like,
she had a very kind of boring life. He was the adventurer who's now like whisking her away, and now as the honeymoon period ends with their relationship. It's not the best thing to live in. I mean, it still has these moments of beauty.
I'm gonna pick up this big rock so you'll remember this occasion.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'll pick up one that isn't so heavy. Like, there's just so much. The way the movie sort of bumbles along, it unfolds so naturally at a point where it almost feels like the entire script is working on some level of improvisation. Because
sure. Well, it's a lot of his style. Too.
Yeah, and I imagine that would be probably what was happening and occurring at the time, particularly with these actors because they're both really talented.
And we bring up things, we laugh at them now, but you kind of you laugh during the movie? Because I kind of don't. Like, I just kind of, I'm caught up in her vision of what's going on.
I smiled.
But I never laughed at them. Even now,
the situation's too fucked up to really laugh at. I think. I mean, at the end of the day, push comes to shove, and you're looking down the barrel of a gun. He's still a murderer, and she's still a young girl.
But they do a thing I love. I mean, we're going to see him ponder philosophy during all this film, but this is the only one with both of the leads being this young. We're going to have a young lead for Tree of Life, but it'll be a different kind of situation. This, I just love, I forget what part they are on the journey they are, where they bury their stuff. Of him just thinking, yeah, maybe we'll come day and we'll get their stuff again. Or maybe one years from now, that people are going to dig it up and kind of wonder how this all happened. Yeah. And what is all this stuff? And I just thought it to be a very sweet thing of yeah, wait, what?
Yeah.
It's too heavy to carry, but maybe this could be good for something.
Also, you know that they're not coming back there for that.
No.
So,
also, where is this? This is the side of the road.
Right.
There's no marker.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting name for the movie too, because they never actually go to what I consider to be the Badlands.
Right.
But they're around where it is.
They're in a lot of Montana.
Yeah, in South Dakota,
right?
Which is the prominent place where the Badlands is, but they never actually go to the Badlands.
And there's such a this is in the character's mind. He hates South Dakota.
Yeah,
but loves Montana.
But he's never been.
Right. But you feel when the Ruskies are going to come, they're going to just nuke South Dakota. No one's going to cry.
Yeah, no one's going to cry. That's where he hopes they drop it. And then later it makes reference to him never having been to Montana. And then they see the lights in the distance of Cheyenne or maybe it's someplace in Montana. I don't remember. But it's a large city for Montana. What was the big city we drove through when we went through Montana?
Missoula?
Yeah, Missoula. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, not Missoula. That's in Mississippi. It's something like that.
Missoula's in Montana.
Oh, it is? Okay. Regardless, I think there's two, because I think the Missouri College is there.
Possibly,
whatever.
Yeah.
Regardless, it's not a big city. It's big for that area. I mean, we live in Chicago, so we have a different perspective, and Chicago's small compared to New York, but they look at the lights of the city over there, and it's oh my God, wow, it's that's a big city, that's really something. What a sight, you know what I mean? And so much of the film, especially for her character and him too, I think kind of comes out of naivety mixed with boredom.
Sure.
And however that went wrong, that concoction led to murder.
But there's still an appreciation of their small discoveries. There is a warmth.
They give weight. It's not making fun of them.
No.
It's just these are where this is their life. I mean, this is where they're from.
Yeah. I mean, their tree fort. I found it very noticing that even though it is delightfully convoluted and it has great sticks that you have to kind of climb up and whatnot, it is still not surrounded by walls. Mm-hmm. It is part of nature. It is this element where they can feel a belonging and a sense of this is the best way to be in this area. Mm-hmm. There's a comfortableness they have on the road that just couldn't be sustained with their lifestyle. Mm-hmm. Partly because he keeps killing people.
The thing is, he was doomed from the first person he killed.
Oh, sure.
So I think he knew that.
Yeah.
So that's why at that point it started to get really cavalier. What's kind of weird is I feel like he's the type of guy that may not have committed a crime until he killed that guy.
I think so.
It's just bizarre. So, yeah. Even the police officers like him. That's the other thing. It's that charisma that he has that Martin Sheen's so good at giving away.
Well, it's so rare to see a murderer character who's not hateful.
Yeah.
Like I said, he just can't function in the society that he's in.
The only way it becomes self-preservation.
Yeah.
Almost immediately. Not that makes it more righteous.
No, it doesn't. But like he would have been like a good cowboy.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like, he can't he just can't work in a world where you have to like pay taxes. Mm-hmm. It's not like he's like a free spirit. He just isn't good at it.
Yeah.
And which is interesting. I mean, at the end of the movie, the kind of great finale of this film, he's just so surprised when she's like, "Okay, here we go. We're going to do another kind of run from the cops. Saying, going to shoot them all." She goes, "No, I'm done."
I can't believe you.
Yeah. I love that moment so much. It's so incredible between them because like he's just so genuinely surprised. Like, wait, what? Why is that a good idea?
Well, and then like the great like pathos here is at the end when he runs from the cops and gets away and decides to stop the car and shoot out his own tire and wait for them to catch him. And it gets at what I was talking about earlier in the film. He doesn't want to do this on his own.
No, he needs.
If she was still in the car, they'd kept driving.
He has affection for her, but he still doesn't always like. He still likes her more as someone who sees him.
Yeah.
He's not like asking her perspective on life.
We get that from the
needs someone
to witness him.
Yeah,
because this is the most important thing he's ever done, and it's the last thing he's ever going to do.
Which is so interesting. As like once he's like being taken away, he is caught up in the idea of like celebrity for a second, right? It is validating him in a way that he's never really had any validation except for her. Now this is a larger scale as he's being arrested, and sent to a helicopter, and. There's still sadness in that completely. Like there's because he's not a character filled with hate that it's easier to look at him. I think, and it's beautiful. It's all these films are beautiful, and this is a debut film with such an assured sense of style and grace as it looks towards these two complicated characters who. Speak for themselves, but never speak in like thesis sentences about themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I'm with you. I don't have much more to add, to be honest with you. The movie itself flows really quickly. It's got an amazing pace to it. The characters are super, neat and interesting and nuanced, and they also feel very realistic. They're definitely from a time and a place. You get a real sense of place in this film, and the performances are excellent too. And the voiceover is a nice little... Sometimes voiceover is unnecessary. In fact, most of the time it is. But it's not necessarily bad, even when it's unnecessary. And it works in this film.
Good. I'm glad you said that because we have some more voiceover coming.
No, and it's fine. I mean, if that's a means of telling your story, it's just sometimes I think like... Okay, a certain type of voiceover is unnecessary. Like Casino is like the worst. Like that movie just has voiceover to have voiceover. It's silly.
But this is... We'll talk more about it in the upcoming episodes. Such, but like Malick uses voiceover. Well, first of all, I always say that Malick characters speak in a whisper, and there's something just kind of very majestic and yet like prayer-like about the way they do this. It is. They're speaking their thoughts, and these are thoughts of beauty and some really interesting observations. The voiceover is almost never to move the plot forward. Mm-hmm. It is just providing poetry on top of what you already see.
Yeah, and it adds some nice characterization to that character in particular that kind of separates her. And I don't know if the voiceover didn't exist, would I think of her as more of a villain?
I'm sure. Absolutely.
So it humanizes her.
You might think nothing of her at all. You might think she's like a non-character, just kind of like tagging along. But instead in this, she becomes absolutely fascinating. A witness and someone who is the only one on screen maturing. Mm-hmm. And coming to her own, not only with the plot, but kind of who she is and what she believes in.
Yeah, it's so much of her characterization is told, even though her inflection never changes deliberately, which I think is really nice. It has a nice cadence to it, and it's pretty. You do find out the things that she's interested in. Mm-hmm. She's enjoys through that, like the way she talks about the train moving away in the distance and stuff like that. And yeah, it does come off as poetry. You feel like when words aren't said unnecessarily, even when you have a character that says a lot of unnecessary words. Mm-hmm. And that's the case with the Martin Sheen character. What's his name? Kit? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Kit Hawley. So, anyway, I don't have anything further to add. Do you?
Nope.
Okay, so so this if you enjoyed this episode of the Badlands, please leave a comment. You can leave a comment at theartimmortal.com. Tell us what your favorite Malick films are. You can tell us where this movie sort of rates there. You can tweet us at the Immortals Pod. That's our Twitter handle. The Immortals, that tag comes from another podcast that is sort of carried here on the network, or was definitely carried here on the network, and that's the podcast where...
myself and 3 others, we are the Immortals, where we are reviewing 1001 movies, albums, food, songs, and TV shows that you must see before you die. Yesterday's episode had the 4-hour Taiwanese beloved film called A Brighter Summer Day. And also, this is not a very good album. And then the TV show was the beloved RuPaul's Drag Race. So,
and I know someone on season 10.
Which started this week.
Okay, you're looking forward to
that.
Yes,
I am. I'll be watching it.
Ad Absurdum?
Ad Absurdum is back. Sarah and Meredith, 2 real-life lawyers, talk about legal ramifications and pop culture. They reviewed the John Carpenter film Escape from New York, starring not Solid Snake, but Snake Plissken. Inspiration. It is the movie where, they made Manhattan into a prison island and let all the prisoners just kind of go crazy on it. But the president crashed on there. It's up to Snake Plissken, one of the best action names ever, with an eye patch to go get the president.
Well, his name isn't Snake, but he keeps telling everyone to call him Snake. Yeah. I mean, we know him as Snake Plissken, but call me Snake.
Yeah.
Does he keep saying that?
So that is a new episode out. You can check out that. But also, just to give a plug to the thing that doesn't sponsor us, but right now, Badlands and Escape from New York and A Brighter Summer Day are on Filmstruck.
Yeah. So we'll be talking about that stuff, and you can check me out on my YouTube channel, Constant Aversion. That's where you can look for me on there. You can leave a comment on there. Say hi to me on there. Say hi, Eric. I heard you on the Immortals. That's where I came from. Or on the Art. I was going to say the Art Immortal.
Yeah.
Let's take 5.
So we'll be back next week with the next film by Terence Malick. He made it just a few years later, starring Richard Gere. It's Days of Heaven.
All right.
If you like Badlands, there's a very good chance you'll like Days of Heaven. These are 2 very similar films.
Okay.
So, until then, let's review on iTunes, blah, blah, blah. I'm Austin Luger.
I'm Eric Martindale.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
While to the south, we could see the lights of Cheyenne, a city bigger and grander than I'd ever seen. I felt all kind of things looking at the lights of Cheyenne, but most important, I made up my mind to never again tag around with the hell-bent type, no matter how in love with him I was. Finally, I found the strength to tell Kit this. I pointed out that even if we got to the far north, he still couldn't make a living.
I can get a job at the mines. Northwest Mines. Hell, I got all the qualifications. I can ride and shoot. And I don't mind the cold. In fact, I kind of like the cold.
What?
Nothing. I was just running off with the mouth. As usual.
I'm sorry I wasn't listening.